Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
All of those who attempt to enter the country illegally, and thus prosecuting them all, and thus separating hundreds, if not thousands more children from their parents. My panel here is with me. Senator Santorum, I believe that you're supportive of the administration's policy on this. Do you agree with the invocation of Scripture to defend?
Careful, Rick. It's Sunday.
Yeah, no, I'm very careful about this. I mean, there are many religious leaders who object to this policy, and I certainly understand why they object.
The leaders of your church, the Catholic Church, are very upset about it.
It's gut-wrenching to see these images and to understand what's going on. At the same time, you have to, governmental officials have to look back and look at the consequences of what the law is. And the reality is, as Jeff Sessions has said repeatedly, the law is in place to make sure that we treat people fairly under the law and we have a deterrent effect. The reality is that everybody who's going to be disagreeing with me on this panel is sounding very compassionate. Oh, we need to take all these people in. We need to take all these people in. I just say that there is a consequence to that. I mean, if you say we're going to take these people in, more people will come, and more people will come, and we'll have a bigger and bigger problem at the border. You'll be putting more children at risk of a 2,000-mile trek through Mexico, which is not an easy thing to do. I mean, there are real consequences to this, and this is what I would say to all of you. You want America to be open? Fine. I would argue, give your addresses out and tell the people who come to this country, you can come to my house. You can stay here. And you can come to my house and you can stay here as long as you want. I'll pay for your education.
Rick,
I'll pay for your
that's a false equivalence.
It's not a false equivalence.
No, yes it is. Nobody is saying that we want... No, let me say this.
But they are saying that.
Saying... You're putting words in people's mouth. Nobody is saying we want an open country. What we are simply saying is we don't want 2-year-olds torn from the arms of their mothers.
And what's the consequence of that?
The consequence of that is that we're going to have 2,000 children who are going to have incredible damage, emotional damage. The consequence of that is human suffering.
The
consequence of that is Americans that are outraged at seeing American values being violated.
Put them in that situation.
Listen, it is the utmost hypocrisy. It is the utmost cynicism to quote Scripture, the same Scripture that was quoted to justify slavery, to justify that. And shame on any Christian that is doing that.
It's supposed to be a country of values
and laws.
There is no law.
And look, the law that's in place now is the same law that was in place with the Obama administration, with the Bush administration, etc. And I've listened to former Attorney General Gonzalez under the Bush administration who said there is discretion and that clearly this government, this president has utilized his discretion to separate families. That's the values that he is putting on the American people. I think the American people and you, Senator, should stand up and say, no, when we have and we see something that is so horribly wrong, we're going to stand up and we're going to make sure that does not occur.
Parents, let me just one point. Yeah. These parents broke the law.
Okay, they did not break the law if they're seeking asylum.
They can seek asylum within the country that they have. They can go to the embassy and seek asylum. they don't have to go 2,000 miles and cross the border.
Governor, last question. Should Democrats be willing to give something in order to have this policy, because that's what President Trump wants. He's using this as a negotiating tactic.
Yeah, but what they've put on the table right now doesn't address this problem at all. What Paul Ryan's so-called compromise does not address this issue at all. Democrats are willing to compromise. We don't want total open borders, but what we do want is to be a nation that does have compassion. Rick, you have 7 children. If you were living in Honduras, which is the country with the highest child homicide rate, the country with the highest female homicide rate, gangs, you would not leave all 7 of your children there.
With all due respect,
you would want to save them. You could drive nails through my hands. You could whip me on my back, but do not take my children away. That, to me, is totally not who we are as a country.
With all due respect, the only person who's actually talking about a solution to this is Marco Rubio, who's out there talking about foreign policy that actually can address these issues. We have not done any. We have completely ignored our southern. Yes, we have.
Because if you look at what's taking place in the House, and that's why we came 2 votes short of a motion to discharge, to put a bill on the floor next week that we collectively can do to make a difference and to change it. So we have been, so there's people that's working on it now, and instead
you're talking about immigration.
And instead of immigration,
I'm talking about foreign policy with respect to our involvement in Honduras, Guatemala, Cuba.
Listen, I'm from Nicaragua, okay? I was born in Nicaragua.
If you want to solve the problem, let's solve the problem instead of trying to deal with the symptom of the problem. 200 people have been killed like dogs in Nicaragua, and people are desperate to get out there. That's happened in the last 6 weeks. And you're right, there is a foreign policy component to this. But there is also an immigration policy. It is not either or. That's a completely false equivalency. And I would say to my senator, Marco Rubio, he happens to be my senator, you should be on Dianne Feinstein's bill, where there are 43 Democrats.
And that bill does what?
That bill
stops the separation policy?
This practice of separating children. Marco, like me, these are kids that look like us, that sound like us. Their parents are doing what our parents did. Flee oppressive regimes, flee economic distress to have their children, to be able to give them a better life.
It is Monday, the 18th of June of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Yes, folks, another busy weekend, huh? We never get rest anymore. Darn. Well, I had an interesting weekend, and actually some of its repercussions continue. I've, since Friday, after the show, doing chores around the house, out in the garden, around the rest of the property, I started feeling like I pulled a muscle in my stomach, and my legs were, I'm getting old, right? Felt like I kind of stretched my groin a little bit more, and just from doing physical stuff, I'm not used to these ailments popping up and then just lingering. Yeah, I haven't grown accustomed to it, and so I went ahead and rested a little bit on Saturday. It felt pretty good, and then got worse during the day, and really bad to the point where it was really hard to walk. And Sunday felt okay. Legs didn't feel so bad, but I still had a little bit of a lower abdominal stitch. And it was okay for a few hours in the morning, and then got really bad. And once again, hard to walk. Just even steps. Once I got going, I was okay. I couldn't, but yeah, I was shuffling. It wasn't really walking. It was moving from a point to another point, and not very fast either. So, same symptoms are lingering today, and I've decided I will get myself into urgent care and find out what the heck's going on. Some of these things that pop up when you're in that netherworld between sleep and dream, or wakefulness and dream when you're sleeping. Things can, become, can be epiphanies. And so, yeah, it occurred to me early on, actually, that I might have some sort of obstruction, maybe. And so I took the proper precautions, a few more fibrous vegetables, mostly. And so, yeah, there's that part about it. And then I'm not running a fever. And I don't have what's known as rebound pain. You know, when you push on an area that hurts and then it hurts on the rebound. So I don't have that. And I don't have a fever. But could it be appendicitis? Let's hope not. I will let you know tomorrow if there is a show tomorrow. I hope so. I presume there will be. All right. Well, enough of that HIPAA violation. It's okay. I said it. It's me. I don't like anybody else bringing it up, without my permission. But, with me, it's okay, I guess. Okay. Well, kids are still being abducted and thrown into concentration camps. And apparently, among the Republicans, Trump has now become more popular. Yeah. In fact, more Republicans trust Kim Jong-un than Nancy Pelosi. Now, that's brainwashing. That is how brainwashing works. Because one of them has, what is it, 10,000 Christians in his own gulags? And the other one wants us to have health care. It's a toss-up for the Republicans. Gee, which one is worse? I don't know. Well, obviously, us getting health care is bad. This is how the brainwashing works. I have said it over and over and over. And I think that you can combat brainwashing by doing a very simple task. In the midst of it, always look at things from 3 different perspectives. Always. That's called triangulation, and you might be able to come to a truth. Quotation marks around the truth. But it's closer than just grabbing onto one thing and obsessing on that and saying, that is the truth. That's not only intellectually lazy, it could be harmful to your absolute psyche to the point that you would think it was okay for Kim Jong-un to incarcerate, 10,000 Christians? Mr. and Mrs. Christian America? That's okay, but Nancy Pelosi is somehow more evil because she wants everyone to have health care? I guess what that means is that if everyone has health care, Mr. and Mrs. Christian America has something taken from them, and they can't have that. Instead of everything being equal, they think they are losing when it is equal. What kind of psychology is that? That's not glass half full, glass half empty. That's you're getting some of mine when it wasn't yours to begin with. It doesn't matter. All boats float the same. Oh no, my boat has to float higher. Well, that's actually physically impossible unless you can levitate the boat. And then it's not really floating now, is it? Well, enough of this metaphysical discussion on Monday. It is River City Hash Mondays, and every now and then you get a tidbit of red bell pepper philosophy. Yep. Oh! What's going to be on the rest of the menu? Well, Rick Santorum. I know it's not good to say Rick Santorum this early in the morning because we know what kind of gooey substance that evokes. Well, we don't want to do that, no. Rick Santorum thinks that people who disagree with their, kids being, or kids, immigrant kids, refugee kids being ripped away from their parents, people who disagree with that, well, they ought to be willing to be doxxed. They should actually dox themselves. Give up their addresses and say, oh yeah, come on over and live in my house. Rick Santorum. Did this guy learn politics in 8th grade? Yes, he did. On the rest of the menu, continuing in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. The number of Trump cronies who secretly met with Russians just hit 11. I'm looking at you, Roger Stone. Trump uses his weekly address to lie to the public about immigrants. Remember when FDR used to have his fireside chats? Oh, you don't remember? Neither do I, because I wasn't even born then. Not even close. But I do remember them. I don't remember hearing any fireside chat where FDR had to lie. Well, he wasn't a real estate magnate, now was he? From New York. That's how they have to be. And after the right-wing Italian government, who was very pro-Trump, by the way, called them fake refugees and set them adrift, 630 children, pregnant women, and elderly in need of medical care are finally welcomed in Spain. And this is after they were turned away from a few other ports of entry. Oh, no, we can't have you. After the break, we'll then move to the chef's table where Trump's consumer watchdog pick to replace Mick Mulvaney draws criticism from the left and the right. Wow. And nobody is protecting India's bravest journalists. Nobody. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. You'll notice to the rightish of the page the chat room link. Kelly Lincoln, our roaring girl, monitors that for your, monitoring convenience. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you'll notice the contribute donate buttons, and they're there for, our convenience because we have to pay the bills and we're unable to do it without you. So thank you very much for your generosity. There's no joking around about that. So thank you indeed. And you can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that for you. And I'm supposed to take care of Facebook, but I just let it take care of itself. So we're there too. And what else? Oh yeah, follow me. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. Now remember, we're not Putmans. We're the higher class of Putts. Okay? That's right. We do everything a little differently. Ha 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 ha. All right. So follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I also post show notes and links on Daily Co's. So when that's an integral part of the show. So do check that out. And I'm on Daily Co's as Justice Putnam for your convenience. Indeed. You can also follow West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy at Cookbook West. Don't ask me why. You can just search for West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy and Cookbook West will show up. And that's my mistake. I should have been a little bit more clear, apparently, to the AI that was telling me how the world really is. So I have to admit, since I've had a little bit of machine snafus here and we're still working them out, I'm down a computer. So fortunately, the old ones they're still working. It's almost like a Mars expedition. You expect it to last for a few months. The next thing you know, it's 14 years. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed. All right. So I haven't been able to take care of that Twitter account as much. I better mention podcasts can be found, West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy podcasts can be found by way of Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, iTunes, etc., 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 even YouTube. All right. Just a static image, but yeah, we're on YouTube as well. And I guess rate, review us wherever you are. That's supposed to push the show right up somewhere. Why did I choose a W instead of an A? Because I like the name. Okay. Well, this first article here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays, is out of Share Blue Media by Emily Crockett. Oops! Two other Trump associates, Roger Stone and Michael Caputo, forgot to mention that they were offered dirt on Hillary Clinton by a Russian national. Oops! Well, after denying to Congress they'd ever met with Russians during the 2016 campaign, longtime Trump advisor Roger Stone and former Trump campaign aide Michael Caputo have admitted to the Washington Post that, oops, they actually did meet with a Russian national in May of 2016. Somehow it just slipped their minds. But you know what the Washington Post did? It's sort of like, you know how you refresh your screen or your browser, refresh your browser? Well, they refreshed both Caputo's and Stone's brains by the actual audio. Oh, yeah, that'll jar your memory, won't it? Well, with these new admissions from Stone and Caputo, there are now at least 11 Trump associates or campaign officials who have met with Russians. But a year and a half ago, a Trump spokeswoman claimed that the number was 0, big fat zero, like zero tolerance, 0. We have zero tolerance. Stone told the Post that he met with a Russian who calls himself Henry Greenberg, and that Greenberg wanted $2 million in exchange for damaging information about Hillary Clinton. And what kind of damaging information would they get? Oh, let's see, that she took care of refugee girls? Yeah, what evil is that? We're supposed to be using, in fact, that brings up a big question. And this question has been asked in social media, and I don't see it asked anywhere else on the regular media. Okay, so officials have gone to these detention centers, right? And they're housing all these boys. Where are the girls? Okay, just saying. So, I guess Hillary Clinton, the damaging info is that she was running a sex ring out of the basement of a pizza parlor in a Washington, D.C. area. Uh-huh. Well, you know what the Nazis said. Always blame your enemy for what you are doing. Okay? Remember that. So, you don't understand Donald Trump, Stone recalls telling Greenberg as he rejected the offer. He doesn't pay for anything. We'll run it through his foundation. And they probably did. And that was 2 weeks before the infamous Trump Tower meeting, which makes it even more likely that Trump Jr. knew that he was violating campaign finance laws by seeking very valuable info from a foreign source. Caputo set up the meeting after Greenberg told Caputo's Russian immigrant business partner that he had information that could help the Trump campaign. Caputo, who was a communications official for the Trump campaign at the time, decided that Stone, who was still in Trump's orbit, but no longer with the campaign, was the right guy to vet this information. Yeah, sort of like a back channel. So, neither Caputo nor Stone disclosed this meeting in Congress, even when Caputo was asked. And Stone told the Washington Post last year that he didn't talk to anybody who was identifiably Russian during the 2-year run-up to this campaign. They didn't have any accents. I had no idea they were Russians. So why are Caputo and Stone granting full interviews to the Post to admit to this meeting now, when they denied it for so long? Because Mueller has receipts, and there's no sense denying it anymore. How crazy is the Russian? Caputo texted Stone after the meeting. Stone replied that Greenberg wanted big money and that the meeting had been a waste of time. But Stone and Caputo are also trying to push Trump's diluted deep state narrative that the FBI somehow conspired against his campaign. I didn't realize it was an FBI sting operation at the time, but it sure looks like one now, Stone told the Post. Yeah, well, I don't know, abscam? That happened during Roger Stone's tenure as a dirty trickster. And he had tentacles into that, too. Oh, what was abscam? Well, that was, I believe, was it mostly California politicos and officials who were set up to meet with Arabs to take money and do some sort of heinous deed, and it was really an FBI sting. Greenberg, it turns out, had worked as an FBI informant in the past, but there's no evidence he was doing so in 2016. Greenberg had testified in a court filing that he had stopped his cooperation with the FBI sometime after 2013 and told the Post he wasn't working for the FBI when he met with Stone. It also wouldn't have made sense for the FBI to set up a sting operation at that point, 2 months before the agency opened a counterintelligence investigation into Russian election interference. Well, it's clear that Trump's cronies are getting desperate and that Mueller has their number. The Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays, is Out of Think Progress by Emily Q. Hazard. Donald Trump is not backing away from his administration's brutal campaign against immigrants, using his weekly taped address to conflate immigrant children with gang members, to blame Democrats for abetting slaughter, and to suggest that middle school kids are like animals. The timing of a fear-mongering address like this is calculated. The public conversation on immigration has been dominated in recent days by the Trump administration's policy of separating children from their parents at the border, even when seeking amnesty. Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced a policy in April, and almost 2,000 children have been separated from their parents since. The DHS began ramping up the practice in May. So while the public expresses its outrage over the policy of family separation, Trump finds it an opportune time to whip up anxiety about a specter of violence and conflate immigrants with violent gang members. So, Trump says, brings up MS-13 because that's the good boogeyman. Because they certainly look scary, don't they? I mean, those tattoos are damn scary. Even when they're pictures of people who aren't even in MS-13. They're damn scary. MS-13. They're gonna kill you in your sleep. And so I got to tell you, I live in rural white America. And there's some people that really believe this BS. That's why they moved here. We want a white-topia. It's so scary seeing graffiti in Fresno. Really? Give me a break. Well, it's obvious. It's an obvious lie. Immigrant kids are not dangerous, and there is no legitimate reason to separate them from their parents and hold them like prisoners. But they're not prisoners. They're hostages, don't you know? Human shields. I think that's a more apt description, because what Trump is doing reminds me of what Saddam did. We'll use the kids as human shields. I can take incoming from that. All right, Emily Q. Hazard from Think Progress penned this last piece here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Hundreds of migrants have landed in Spain after more than a week sailing in search of a friendly port. Italy's government had turned away the 630 migrants, including pregnant women, children, and people needing medical care, who had been rescued from rubber dinghies off the coast of Libya. Matteo Salvini, Italy's deputy prime minister and minister of the interior, said the people were fake refugees, and that closing Italy's port to the rescue ships was a political victory. Like the Republican Party in 2016, Italy's League Party campaigned on a staunch anti-immigrant platform. Oh, you mean racist? Yes, because they are. Well, migrants landed on shore Sunday in Valencia, shouting for joy and singing with relief, where they were greeted by almost 2,000 volunteers and officials offering translation, medical care, and immigration processing. Spain, under its new Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, has granted the migrants 45 days in the country to receive asylum processing and care. And President Emmanuel Macron of France has also said refugees are welcome in that country. Spain may soon be welcoming more migrants. Rescue ships picked up more than 1,000 people Friday and Saturday alone. Well, good for them. At least we still have some humanitarians left in the world. Old Europe? Who knew? All right, let's get to our break, and we'll come back and go through, well, of course, weather from around the world, and then we'll finish with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Coral reefs are already appreciated for their beauty, but they provide another, more tangible benefit, too.
Every day, waves are coming ashore. And, of course, during storms, you might have 20-foot waves. The reef is breaking those waves, essentially dissipating that energy before they hit the shoreline.
Mike Beck, a marine scientist for the Nature Conservancy and UC Santa Cruz.
If we're to lose just a little bit of our reef, we modeled just losing the topmost meter of reef, storm costs would double.
Beck and his team used 30 years of wind and wave data, combined with hydrodynamic, ecological, and economic models, to figure out what future floods would look like with shorter reefs.
And you repeat that all around the world for all 72,000 kilometers of coral reef coastline.
Overall, they found that the flood protection benefits of coral reefs save the global economy $4 billion a year. And the biggest beneficiaries are Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, Mexico, and Cuba. The full list is in the journal Nature Communications.
National economies only account for what you take from ecosystems. That is, what you harvest every year gets included in your GDP, not the benefit of keeping it there.
By pinning a number on the flood protection benefits of coral reefs, Beck says he hopes government economists will see corals as more than just a draw for snorkelers. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser, filling in for your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. As the U.S. population ages, more people are at risk for injuries. The largest percentage of injury-related deaths among this group are caused by falls. Elizabeth Burns is with CDC's National Center for Injury Prevention and Control. She's joining us today to discuss ways to prevent injuries and deaths from falls among senior adults. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me.
Elizabeth, what are some of the more common consequences when a senior adult falls?
Well, first, it's important to note that falls are incredibly common. More than 1 in 4 older adults will fall in a given year. Common consequences include loss of independence and an increased fear of falling, as older adults are afraid to do the same kinds of activities they were doing before. And this can actually lead to more falls, as older adults have less strength in their lower body. Common consequences include hip fracture and traumatic brain injury. And ultimately, in 2016, almost 30,000 older adults died because of a fall.
So are falls more common in men or in women?
Falls are more common in women, and more women go to the emergency department because of a fall, and more women die because of a fall. However, the rate of fall deaths are more common in men than women. What this means is that out of 100,000 men, more will die from a fall than out of 100,000 women.
What are common causes of falls among older people?
Getting On and off the toilet and getting in and out of bed are common causes of falls. Walking around the hallways at night when the lights are off is a common way people fall. There's also an increased amount of medications used in seniors, which have side effects like making them lightheaded, and that increases the risk of falls and is a common cause.
With all of those factors, what are some ways our listeners can decrease their chances of falling?
Older adults should talk to their healthcare provider or doctor about how they can decrease their chances of falling. This can be done during the annual wellness visit or during annual physicals. The doctor will recommend an exercise program that should increase strength and balance or maybe refer you to a physical therapist. Additionally, they can look through your medications and perhaps reduce your doses or suggest medications that decrease your chances of falls.
Are there things we can do to modify our homes to prevent falling?
Oh, absolutely. Installing grab bars on the side of the toilet, making sure that rugs are taped down or removed, making sure that there's lighting in the hallways are all really simple ways that an older adult can modify their home to prevent falls.
Where can listeners go to get more information about preventing falls?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/steady, and that's spelled STEADI.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I've been talking today with Elizabeth Burns about ways to prevent fall-related injuries and deaths among senior adults. Improving strength and agility through regular exercise and removing potential obstacles in the home can help decrease the risk for falls. If you or a loved one is older and struggle with mobility, talk with a healthcare provider about ways to decrease the risks for fall-related injuries and death. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Political parties are active today at the local, state, and national levels. Despite the fears of the framers, they are an important part of the political system. Here are some ways in which political parties might be useful to our nation. First, political parties give people a way to join with others of similar interests to try to influence their government. People working through their parties can nominate candidates for public office, raise money for their candidates, and encourage people to vote for them. Also, political parties can and do get many people involved in the process of government. They give people a choice of candidates and programs. Finally, the political party that is not in power can and does debate and criticize the party in power. That's all for today's podcast. The show's theme song is Complacent by Cheryl B. Engelhardt. You can find Cheryl online at cbemusic.com. 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
Today's corporate captains like to think of themselves not as mere business people, but as modern society's innovative geniuses. But innovation for what purpose? After all, some of society's most inventive minds are flim-flammers, Ponzi schemers, gamers, embezzlers, thieves. Sure enough, too much innovation coming out of corporate suites these days amounts to shameless schemes to dupe and rip off rank-and-file workers. The latest one is a hustle called gamification, an attempt by such giants as T-Mobile and Walt Disney to give game-like, quote, psychological prizes to employees, rather than giving pay raises or cash bonuses. As the honchos of United Airlines learned, however, not everyone bites the corporate bait. United recently announced a new fun game for employees. Rather than giving standard bonus payments this year, bosses were creating a dazzling sweepstakes lottery with such wow prizes as luxury cars and $100,000 in cash. But the sizzle quickly fizzled, as United's 90,000 workers realized that more than 99% of them would get zero. United had hoped the game would create, quote, excitement among the rank and file, but instead it created resentment. Workers, naturally preferring bonus cash to bogus corporate excitement, rebelled with such fury that United is now reconsidering the switch. That case aside, however, the corporate push to replace real pay with cheap psychic income is on the rise. More corporations are even hiring chief behavioral officers to analyze reams of personal data on employees to devise non-cash ways to motivate them. This is Jim Hightower saying, what we have here is the deterioration of executive ethics to the point that openly gaming and cheating America's workaday majority is considered fair play.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
Is labor history in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day the United States Supreme Court upheld the Adamson Act. The act had initially been passed and signed into law the previous September to avoid a nationwide railway strike. It established the 8-hour workday and overtime pay for interstate railroad workers. The 4 railroad brotherhoods, the engineers, firemen, brakemen, and conductors, had been pushing for these terms since at least 1915. When the railroads refused to budge, the unions prepared to strike. It was the first federal law that sought to determine minimum wages and maximum hours for private industry. The railroads were furious with President Woodrow Wilson for demanding quick passage of the law. They filed the case Wilson versus New, which challenged the constitutionality of the act. The railroads refused to abide by the new law while they waited for their case to be heard, ultimately by the U.S. Supreme Court. The 4 railroad brotherhoods grew tired of waiting and organized for another strike. The court rejected the railroads' claim and upheld the act. President Wilson had hoped to ensure labor peace as the United States was on the cusp of entering World War I. Seen as a powerful victory for the unions, the railway employees pressed for similar demands. When the industry looked as though it was headed for yet another strike, President Wilson exercised the Army Appropriations Act and issued an executive order at the end of 1917 that placed the railroads under federal control. This nationalized the railroad industry into 3 divisions under the newly established United States Railroad Administration between the years of 1917 and 1920. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
From Singapore, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. For a matter of hours on Wednesday, there was hope that one of Europe's longest-running diplomatic disputes had been resolved. The dispute is known as the Macedonian naming issue, and it centers around the Republic of Macedonia, a nation of around 2 million people that rests just north of Greece. Except Greece has beef with Macedonia's name, saying it implies ownership of the Greek state of Macedonia and historical ties with Macedon, the ancient Greek kingdom once helmed by Alexander the Great. In 1995, the 2 countries agreed to a UN deal mandating that as formal talks continued to resolve the dispute, Macedonia would be known at the United Nations as the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, or FYROM. After years of on-again, off-again talks, it was announced on Tuesday that Macedonia would change its name to the Republic of Northern Macedonia, under the terms of a deal worked out by Macedonia's Prime Minister that would likely pave the way for the country to eventually join the European Union and NATO. But hold off on the confetti. In a Wednesday news conference, Macedonian Prime Minister George Ivanov said the deal was unacceptable and damaging, and he vowed to veto it should it win the backing of Parliament. It just so happens Ivanov is backed by hardline nationalists who refuse to concede on the naming issue at all. And just because Macedonia's leader doesn't like the deal, don't assume Greece does either. The country's leading opposition party has already lodged a no-confidence vote targeting Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras, accusing him of negotiating away Greece's heritage by allowing the Republic of Northern Macedonia to use the name Macedonia even in that context. Nobody thought resolving the name dispute would be easy, but sometimes it takes a glimmer of a truce to end a conflict to see just how much both sides still want to keep fighting. Luke Vargas, Singapore.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Okay, I may have a sort of like not as lively tone. I must admit, I'm not as uncomfortable sitting down or laying flat even. But when I start to move around, that's when it starts to become a bit uncomfortable. So if the last 2 days were any indication, it feels okay now. I mean, tolerable. And then it becomes a little bit less tolerable as the day progresses. So I'll probably, as soon as I get done with the show, hey, the show must go on. Some people will say, why? Why wouldn't you not go directly to the hospital? Because the show must go on. All right. I'm not totally out of it. I when I had my major shoulder surgery a few years ago, that was an outpatient procedure, and I was able to take care of the station that day. I'm ambidextrous, so my right arm might have been out of commission for a bit, but I was still able to type with the left and do what I needed to do. So I don't know. I'm not dead yet. Okay, there's plenty of time for that. Okay, let's begin with weather from around the world, and we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently, 57 degrees, slated to go to a high of around 87, maybe a little bit higher. Winds currently are about 1 mile per hour out of the east-southeast, will be shifting out of the northwest in a few hours at 5 to 10 miles per hour, which is our normal wind speed this time of year. Breathe in, breathe out. And speaking of which, tonight it will remain at 5 to 10 miles per hour, but out of the north. And then tomorrow, oh my gosh, we go up to 93 or higher, and winds will then be light and variable. We did have a thunderstorm and lightning electrical disturbance warning yesterday, in which I guess they had to ground flights at the local airport in Medford because of ground-to-cloud lightning. Oops! Right around the airport, too. So that was quite something. And we were supposed to get a little bit of rain, but I don't know if we did. So better water. I hope. Yeah, someone better water for me until I get back from the doctors. I don't know if I can lug that hose around myself. Ooh. And I'm not letting my mom do it, damn her. She wants to do everything. Stop it, Mom. Okay, well, dry conditions will continue. Grass pollen remains very high. Air quality index is good at 10 parts per million. And the UV index, daytime UV index, remains extremely very high at 9. And it's been there for quite a while. Let's see. It looks like high pressure dominates at 29.99 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And we have scattered clouds around 7,000 feet. Relative humidity is at 89%. So not that dry, if you ask me. All right. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. London is 76 and sunny. Paris is 75 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 66 and with a rain shower. Kiev is 85 and fair. Looks like Kabul is 79 degrees and partly cloudy. Hong Kong, 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 66 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 51 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 56 degrees and cloudy. And New York, with a small craft advisory with gusting winds all around there, is now 82 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Okay, first article here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Ash Mondays, is by anonymous worker bees at Reuters. The White House said on Saturday that Donald Trump will pick Kathy Kreninger, an Office of Management and Budget official, to head the U.S. consumer watchdog, drawing criticism from consumer advocates and dividing conservatives. Kreninger will succeed her boss, the interim head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Mick Mulvaney, if the decision is approved by the Senate. She will bring a fresh perspective and much-needed management experience to the Bureau, which has been plagued by excessive spending, dysfunctional operations, and politicized agendas, White House Deputy Press Secretary Lindsay Waters said in a statement. What? They're bringing in a Democrat to reform everything that Mulvaney and... she means all of us who have been working this department and bureau exactly the way it was meant to be. Yeah, she'll bring a fresh face for sure. Well, she has a law degree and previously worked at the Department of Homeland Security, so she'll know exactly how to budget. And as a congressional staffer, did not immediately respond to a LinkedIn message seeking comment. Trump appointed Mulvaney, who also runs the OMB where he works closely with Kreninger, as temporary head of the CFPB in November to replace Richard Cordray, an appointee of former President Barack Obama. And you got to get rid of every single person that the black guy liked. We want him eradicated from history. If there were any pyramids with Obama's image hieroglyphed on, then they need to be scraped smooth and put on Donnie's nice visage. Okay. Maybe we'll have the one with the growing nose. That would be interesting. During his 6 months at the helm, the former Republican congressman has overhauled the agency, which was conceived to stamp out abusive lending. After the 2007-2009 financial crisis, restructuring departments, shelving new regulations, and dropping cases against payday lenders because they paid him a big payday. At the OMB, Kreninger has worked on financial policy issues for the CFPB, Treasury, and other regulators, and has extensive experience managing large teams in government, according to one person with direct knowledge of her role. But consumer groups and conservatives alike were quick to criticize the announcement, with both sides questioning whether she is qualified and saying she may struggle to gain Senate approval as a result. Allied Progress, a left-leaning consumer group, said Kreninger's nomination was an attempt by Mulvaney to keep a grip on the agency, adding that she had no relevant experience. J.W. Verrett, an associate professor at George Mason University and Antonin Scalia Law School and financial regulation expert, I guess that means he's hyper-conservative, said in an email that Kreninger was regarded in conservative Republican circles as very smart, but he also pointed to her lack of consumer financial experience. The only experience she needs for consumer financial protections is to get rid of them.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Okay, last offering here at the Chef's Table of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. I made it. I feel a little uncomfortable, but I made it. We'll see how it is when I stand up and try to move around for any length of time. But thank you for sticking with us here. Let's see. This is an article out of Foreign Policy magazine by Reina Ayoub. 2 days after she had written in the New York Times about being the target of an online hate campaign, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights warned the Indian government that it had a duty to protect her. And that came within days of several journalism and human rights organizations bringing her case to the UN's attention. Then she says, as a journalist, I'm uncomfortable becoming the story. But in this case, after a week of abuse and death threats that have left me traumatized and at fear for my life, I had no choice in the matter. But what happened to me was relatively light compared to the fate of many journalists who live at a distance from the circles of power in Delhi and Mumbai. Indian journalists are increasingly at risk from fanatics, criminals, and online mobs, and the government is doing barely anything to protect them. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? As a journalist and columnist, I write mostly about criminal investigations, atrocities against India's minority groups, and social justice. I am the author of a book that put forward damning revelations about Prime Minister Modi and his second-in-command, Amit Shah. Hate and threats have been a part of my career in investigative journalism, partly because I am a high-profile Muslim journalist who has persistently called out India's majoritarian politics, but this round was exceptionally virulent. A Photoshop tweet falsely claimed I had written, "I hate India and Indians." Another falsified image claimed to show that I had tweeted in support of child rapists. Neither, of course, was anywhere close to the truth. I frantically wrote tweets making clear I was being trolled, but to no avail. An online mob hurled abuse at me, threatening rape and death. I was a terrorist sympathizer, a slut, a jihadi, a promiscuous woman. They called on me, a patriotic Indian who happens to be Muslim, to pack my bags for Pakistan. And while online vitriol and bullying is not uncommon in India, the trolls then went a step further. My face was edited onto a series of pornographic videos and let loose on the internet. Everywhere I looked, I saw images. I knew everyone who knew me had seen them too. My life was made a living hell. I began suffering from panic attacks, even when I went to the police station to file a complaint. I sat there wondering if the cops who were watching the Mort videos were forming an opinion of my character. But I am alive, and to some degree protected. My colleagues away from the corridors of power are not. On June 14th, the Kashmiri journalist Sujat Bukhari, one of the most prolific voices from the valley and the editor of the regional newspaper Rising Kashmir, was shot dead in Srinagar by unknown assailants. I last saw him 2 weeks ago at a media summit in Lisbon. The moment he saw me, with his usual irony, he commented that the UN had not intervened in Kashmir despite 4 decades of violence and impunity, and how fortunate I was to have gotten the group's support. On the day Bukhari was killed, a UN report citing gross human rights violations in Kashmir was released. His last tweet was a link to coverage of the damning report. In his death, Sujat reminded me of the privilege I enjoyed as a journalist who had the backing of UN special rapporteurs. There are many others like Sujat in my country. In March, Sandeep Sharma, a freelance journalist for the television channel News World, was run over by a truck in the central state of Madhya Pradesh. Sharma had exposed the complicity of police officers in an illegal mining case. And now we have a president of the United States calling our journalists the enemy of the people, and he knows exactly the results he wants. That's the end of our broadcast period for the day, and we'll be back here tomorrow, I'm pretty sure. I hope, keep my fingers crossed, to continue these discussions about world events. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio for the rest of the day, and we'll listen to breaking news on that because it will be coming. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio for the rest of the day, and we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.